citizens, and for our city staff. Dear God, would you please lift these elected officials up to make the best decisions for our community and our home. God, thank you for the many blessings that you've shown to our great community and being a wonderful place that is. God, continue to lift our first responders up in their duty and service. Be with all of us and our families in our daily lives. In your name, amen.
Right hand over your heart.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. That takes us to the approval of the minutes of the meeting of December 6, 2021. Have a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Second. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. That now takes us to our work session, and we're going to discuss future expansion of full-time fire department firefighters. And as we get started here, Chief, no, go ahead. You're welcome to come up too. I want to just recognize some folks and for 2021 and just effort above and beyond. But first of all, Firefighter of the Year, Michael Zamora. And I don't guess Michael's here today, is he? So, but, and then 2021 Recruit of the Year was Landon Robb. And then I think the rest are here. So 20 years service award is for Stephen Canadle. Steve nodded and he's bad. The Lions don't even know how to say his last name, Canadle. And Vince Whitfield. Thank you all. That's, wow, 20 years, that's a long time and appreciate it. So thank you much. So, then 35-year service award to both Mike Webb and our chief, Dennis Quinn. So tremendous thing, and thanks for service and appreciate you know, dedication. I think that says a lot from a leadership standpoint, but also a dedication standpoint to both the city and service and the fire department. So thank each of you all for that. So thank you much.
On the recruit side, I just want to give a shout out for recruit firefighter training with Daniel Hoff, Lupe Avalos, Canton Hallbaker, Landon Robb, and Ryan Wall. Just a shout out for those. And then we've got a few incidents that stand out in our minds. First one, an emergency medical incident on September 16, 2021. I won't go into the details on these, but these incidents, you know, just really stand out to these individuals in regards to their life-saving ability. But that first one goes to Tanner Fisher on his merit citation for an incident on September 16, 2021. A motor vehicle accident that occurred on August 7, 2021. Very dangerous incident that occurred. A merit citation goes to Cole Gwynn, Deputy Chief Wiley Hart, Stephen Canadle, Dustin Schultz, Jason Whitlow, Michael Storm. I know those guys probably know exactly which one I'm talking about. I have no doubts. But thank you for your service, especially in the eyes of adversity.
So we're going to get started our work session. Before I do, you've heard some of the names. I just want to make sure everyone's introduced. Steve Canadle, 20 years of service. Deputy Chief Wiley Hart, 39 years of service. We have Tim Borowski, 3.5 years of service now. Also, I'd like to point out that your wastewater superintendent, Mr. Poole, is also one of our volunteer firefighters. How many years of service now?
Working on 10 years.
Working on 10. So they're here, and during this work session, should you have any questions regarding a volunteer's viewpoint, they're here to answer those. Okay. Also, have Captain Dan Root on the career side and Assistant Chief Whitfield and myself. Don't miss anyone.
No.
You better get up there.
Before our chief gets started and Vince, just to let y'all know, there's a notebook right here, you guys and gals. We didn't get this to you. We got this January 8th. This is our consultant, Mike Peach. This is his review of our ISO rating. ISO, Insurance Service Organization, basically sets the premiums for insurance on houses and commercial properties in town. That review is coming
Mid-March to end of March.
and so Mike comes in to help as a third party to critique us. And so this is his initial report. We'll follow up by sending this electronically out to y'all. It's going to be referred to a few times during this presentation, but we wanted everybody to have a physical copy before you left. So,
Yeah, once again, I received this late Friday, and we're just now getting this out, so. First off, thank y'all for the extra time today. Go over this. Commissioner Ward, you were not here back when we had our previous work session over staffing, so maybe some of this will catch you up a little bit on where we're at, okay? This will be a little bit of review on what we went over, but was it back in April of last year when we had our work session? We've talked about the steady decline of our volunteer membership and the reasons. Once again, it's not just Canyon, Texas. This is nationwide. All volunteer fire departments, for the most part, they're struggling with their volunteer membership, and how do they overcome the decline of volunteer membership? There are several problems that have been identified. They go along with our local trends as well. There's an increasing initial minimum training requirements. We'll go over that a little bit more in detail in a second. Our increasing call volumes. Back when we had great volunteer participation, we had mostly single-income families, and there was more discretionary time available for people to donate their time to such a calling as being a volunteer firefighter. But we're seeing dual, some even triple-income families now. It just decreases that discretionary time available. You have that little bit of discretionary time available now. Do you commit it to being a volunteer firefighter, or do you commit to the kids up with their sports activities and everything else? So there's just that discretionary time is being greatly reduced. Just as I mentioned our last work session last year, I can reference back to the mid-1980s when I came on, 1986. I can remember the year that we hit, I'm getting ahead of myself, back then we had up to 40 volunteer members, possibly 10 recruits, up to 10. You'll see that we're beginning our year this year with 20 volunteer members and 6 recruits. That's basically a 50% reduction in our volunteer membership that we've seen through those years, or since those years. Our initial training has changed when I first came here, because here's your turnout gear, here's your pager goes off, show up, and we're going to start training. It was learn as you go type training. Through the years, due to fatalities and serious injuries, they found that that was a big liability. It's a liability to put someone in a dangerous situation when they haven't been adequately trained. So now, the norm is, and Canyon Fire Department follows this as well, is a recruit comes on in January. We will start with some recruits this month. It will be up into August and September before we have them adequately trained to begin to go to selected emergency incidents. And that's under very strict supervision at that time, and allowing them to participate in those hazardous assignments. So we have that big increase in just the initial training. Someone committing basically a year just to be able to get on the fire truck and do what they want to do. And that's just for the fire training. That's not the EMS training that's coming up after that. Our increasing call volumes. And Chief Harp may remember this as well. I can remember when we averaged 1 call a day for the year. That was big time. 365 calls a day. We closed out 2021 with 1,610 calls. 441% increase in call volume during that time. Why the increase in call volume? Our population's increasing. We've increased in land mass that we have with the city of Canyon, although we do have the county contract area as well. But basically, the more population you get, the more calls you're going to get. The ISO This is not a report from ISO, this is a report from our consultant that we've hired to help us get through our ISO inspection that will be coming up in March. This information is based on information that he obtained while he was here, and I have to give a great big thank you to Assistant Chief Whitfield for working with him and getting all the information that he needs to get.
Mike's been doing this
Mike is
30 plus years.
30 plus years.
Consulting.
He knows ISO. He started out as ISO field service person. He is a registered professional engineer by trade also, but he worked for ISO, then he went into the consulting world. Based on the information he gathered during his visit back in December, we are currently a ISO Class 2C. We have a drop imminent. There's an imminent drop coming. And he is anticipating us to drop to a ISO 3 rating, if not a 4. We're going to be a low 3 or a high 4. He thinks, as you can read through here, he's pretty sure we'll stay to, or go to a 3 and not the 4, but a 4 is possible. If you'll go to page 11, and we'll talk about this a little bit. What does this mean to us? Page 11, the two paragraphs that you have highlighted, the sidebar on the left, talks about if we go from a 2 to a 3, what's going to happen to insurance premiums.
This is one thing that we were incorrect about.
Yes.
And so Mike had to kind of teach us, but we thought, go ahead.
Information we presented to you in April is anything above a 5 anything above 5 does not further affect reducing residential premiums. Residential, it's all commercial. We have found out that we were incorrect in that. Any drop in ISO is going to affect your commercial and residential premiums on your homeowners. And we'll talk about some the suggested improvements here in a little bit on page 31. Let's go to the next slide if we can. Talking a little bit about what's going to happen if we go to a 3, possibly a 4. And we'll talk about why we're dropping to. But if you look, if we go from a ISO 2 rating to a 3, remember the higher the ISO number is, the worse off it is for the city. The lower it is, the better off for the city and their insurance policyholders. Residential, you're going to see an 8% increase. Commercial will be a 2% increase. If we happen to fall to that 4 and the final determination is not based on what our consultant says, it's going to be based in New Jersey with ISO and their final acceptance of the report that their field agent brings in. If we go to the 4, our residential premiums are going to increase 10%, and our commercial premiums will increase 11%. So, by dropping back in our ISO rating, it's going to have an effect on our citizens and those that have insurance policies, homeowners or commercial policies. On page 11, we talked about the increases there, on what could happen there. I would like to preface all this by saying, when we do drop, and that final rating is established, we have 24 months or 2 years to correct the deficiencies and maintain our 2, and not drop back to that 3 or possibly 4. And we'll go over that in just a little bit. Megan, what was the page reference back? One slide, please.
31.
Okay.
But you don't forget why are we dropping this. Page 10, why are we dropping?
Thank you, sir. Page 10, over on the page 10 left-hand side, sidebar area, we have a ladder truck that is sitting over in our truck bay. Basically, the problem is we don't have the staffing to get our ladder truck out the door. It sits there. We get an engine and a truck going out. To get full ISO, receive full ISO credit, we need that truck, engine, and ladder rolling on every fire call in the city limits of Canaan. They're not talking about what our contract area is. They're talking about the fire calls here in the city. So we've got to come up with a way.
Do you mind if I ask a question from time to time?
No, go ahead.
So the ladder truck, it's not just for a WT fire, it's for a house fire to get
For us
up
to
there.
receive full credit ISO-wise, it needs to be rolling every time.
Okay.
And yes, they have functions that they can do on residential Primarily, you would think we have the ladder truck because of the tall buildings at WT.
Right.
But ISO doesn't look at just that. They're looking at the deployment of two engine companies, which that's our engine and our truck and our ladder company. So. Did I cover all that? Sometimes I start talking, I can't remember what I'm talking about. So, the utility accounts, yes. There are currently, as of this morning, 5,244 utility accounts in the city of Canyon. If you look at that, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, this was based on the 2 to the 3?
Yes, this is based on page 12. So
Okay.
if you turn to page 12, highlighted section, an example that Mike Peach put in here.
Yes. Within those 5,244 utility accounts that we have, there's an average jump or increase in their insurance premiums. That's going to total $734,000 and 106. Rough estimate, but right around there, increased payment into those insurance policies that they're not seeing right now. So homeowners and commercial. That's just based on the number of utility accounts that we have. And I don't believe those were separated residential or commercial.
No, I just did a flat, but I think we have 150 commercial. I can divide it out, but that's like my house, your house, all our houses going up by. If that's based on an example, Paul, on the top of page 12, I think he put it as a 2000. If you had a 2003 year premium, you went up 8%. That'd be $160.
So, next slide. Back up, I'm sorry, I'm not ready for that.
Page 32. Dennis, I think.
31, page 31, if you go back, that's the last page in your book. This is the suggestion, the summary of his suggested improvements. Mr. Peach came in and basically talked about, you know, if you're wanting to get to an ISO 1 city, he can give you all the stuff and the requirements it's going to take for the city to get to that ISO 1. It's going to be very cost prohibitive. I'll just put it that way now. Currently, if we wanted to look at the ISO 1 city, we need 2 more fire stations, fully staffed 24/7 in the city right now. In a nutshell. And you know what fire stations cost? We know what personnel costs. That's not what you're talking today. Just the personnel. But his summary suggests improvements for us to be able to maintain our 2. Even though we may be ranked a 3 or 4, like I said, we have 2 years to reply to ISO what our plan is to get the suggested improvements and what we're going to be doing, and they will follow up about every 6 months to see how we're doing on what our plan is to maintain our 2. But these are his list of suggested improvements: providing additional firefighters for the existing unstaffed ladder truck, and providing additional staffing for the 2 existing engines. What I'm asking for today with the 6 will cover number 1. We're talking about 6. It's not a sugar-coated number. It's not a padded number. I do not believe in coming in and asking for padded numbers and hopefully getting something less. So this is what we need right now to get the ladder truck and our engines staffed to the point that we can start complying with what ISO needs. And this is not just what Dennis Glenn needs. This is to help maintain our ISO rating, and hopefully will not affect the cost of insurance premiums in the city. The other thing is a fire marshal. We do not have a full-time dedicated fire marshal with inspection and investigation certifications. That's another key item that he identified, and as well as we do need to update our current fire code to current law code. We're in the 2012 currently, and his suggestion is to get up to the 21 edition, which is being looked at through the building department as well as the fire department. So that's pretty much it. Any questions on ISO before we move on to Sunday? If it seems like I'm being rushed, I am trying to rush myself a little bit just due to the limited time we have before the regular meeting. Next slide. The 2021 FEMA SAFER grant is here. What is SAFER again? It's a federal grant through FEMA that establishes a way for us to get some assistance and some funding for full-time firefighters. Fire marshals not included, part-time firefighters not included. It's for full-time hiring firefighters. Available funding is $560 million this time around. We're projecting up to 500 awards out of this grant funding. Our application period opened last week. As we talked about last year, it snuck up on us last year, so we were once again thinking early to mid-February before the opening period happened. Well, it happened last week. We found that out through the New Year's holiday. The application period closes February the 4th. They basically give you a month to get your application completed and turned in. Once again, the grant, if awarded, would be for 36 months. 36 months, and it's funded 100%. There's no cost match to the city of Canyon during those 36 months.
It's been atypical of this grant funding stream.
Until last year and this year.
It used to be 100, 75, 50 or
It
something.
was an incremental deal
Yeah.
where the city basically took the biggest load at year 3 before they took the whole load of paying for the positions. So once again, 3 years, 36 months, and there's no cost share or match. They're anticipating that the awards will start being issued on May 30th of this year, and they will continue until they're all issued or the funding runs out, but no later than September 30th. We all know our budget year starts in October. Should this happen, that's when we want this to start. So they do allow, even if you get notice of funding on May 30th, they will allow up to a 6-month lag in time before you start using it. That is for the city to prepare for the hiring, recruitment, whatever it may be, to get them ready to go by the anticipated start date, which we would be looking at October 1 of 2022 as the anticipated start date for any full-time positions.
So Dennis, let me see if I got this right. So the grant is for, you would actually file the grant for the six guys.
That's what
the amount is.
That's what I'm
to cover this. For how many months, did you say? So how long? So
3 years.
3 years. 3 years.
36 months, it covers 3 years. So it covers 3 of our fiscal years. Next slide. It covers the salary of full-time firefighters. That's included any projected merit increases during the performance period, so that's all been figured in. It covers the benefits, Social Security, vacation leave, sick leave, employee insurance, workman's compensation, and the city's contribution into retirement. Basically, a round number for a firefighter starting salary with all their benefits is $65,000 a year. And then we, of course, have scheduled merit increases in there if their performance merits that increase. It does not cover overtime, which with 6 coming on, we need to increase our current overtime budget by $30,000 to cover that. It does not cover any equipment associated with the hiring of the full-time firefighters, such as the portable radio and pager. You're looking at $8,500 right there for those 2 items. The portable radio itself is $8,000. Structural wildland PPE, basically a 10-year life on that, $3,500, unless it gets damaged or beyond repair when fire, then we have to replace it, of course. It does not cover any of their duty uniforms, annual work boots, allowance, etc. So basically, you're looking at the grant being able to cover their base salary and all their benefits, the fringe benefits that we provide. Our current staffing, back in 21, we did have 1 retirement with 23 years of service. We had 6 resignations. Out of those 6 resignations, 1 had 11 years of service, 1 had 15 years of service. In 2022, we're starting off the year with 6 applicants. We'll start the Firefighter 1 training late this month. And like I said, they'll be ready for limited responses in October. And in September, during our local fire school, we'll have their state certification exam to get their written exam out of the way. Then they'll have a skills test either before or after that. And we're starting off with 2 volunteer members on our roster. Career staff currently, we have four full-time firefighters, one part-time firefighter. This part-time firefighter position, we're able to create this past budget year. It fills in for full-time positions as needed, but not more than 24 hours per week. We have one captain, one assistant chief, myself. We have our administrative assistant, who is a non-response position, and we have two part-time maintenance techs, which are not response positions. They are basically there to assist the full-time in keeping trucks ready to go, station cleanliness, drill field, fire hydrant maintenance, whatever is needed there. Those part-time maintenance technicians allow us to get things done away from the station without pulling our staff away from the station responses. We'll try to use them more. We currently staff 7 days a week. Fridays and Mondays, we have 2 firefighters, a captain, and our 2 chiefs on. If we're all there, we're all healthy, no one on vacation. Saturdays and Sundays, we have 2 firefighters. Then we have an on-call, 2 firefighters at the station, an on-call officer at home, and then our on-duty career staff is supplemented with volunteer members as they're available to come in and help us, and as they choose to, on the weekends. Tuesday through Thursdays are our best days. That's when we have all 4 of our full-time career guys on, 1 captain and 2 chiefs, and then of course after hours, we're all on a rotating callback system. Rotating callback system works. I will tell you, with our career staff, it's very demanding because they cover the majority of the EMS calls at night. That's what I say EMS calls at night. A lot of what we get called out for in the middle of the night are the EMS calls. Say they had 3 or 4 callbacks during that night, they're still expected to get up and be at work at 8 o'clock in the morning. 24/7 staff, they get the day off in between their shifts to recover, recoup. Our guys do not.
Dennis, let's say tonight you're on call. You get a call at 1 a.m., call at 3 a.m., call at 4 a.m. to go out. You're the main guy.
Yep.
And then you're expected to be in there at 8.
That is correct.
So, Chief, all EMS calls, so any ambulance call that goes out, or what?
Not every, not any. We have some predetermined types of ambulance calls or EMS calls that have been determined through historical events that EMS is more than likely may need help on that call. Very critical patient. If you just send an ambulance out there, we're going to have one person taking care of them. That's the technician on the ambulance, because someone has to drive the ambulance. So very critical calls, if the paramedic needs help, one or two of our firefighters will ride into the hospital. Additionally, there are times when the ambulance may be making a non-critical call. They're already transporting to Amarillo, and our Kangen ambulance is out of town. Call goes out. There's not an ambulance here to respond. Closest ambulance for BSA would be up in Amarillo, off of the loop by the sheriff's office. If they're available, they'll start responding here. But by us being a first responder, it allows us to get on the scene quicker, initiate an initial assessment, initial treatment, until the ambulance gets there.
And I guess the question I have, and you know, I'm learning a whole lot through this. But the question as far as the ambulance calls and what all we're doing, is there some evaluation there as far as for BSA and their contract and what they're doing, to where some of that could be different and where to take a estimate?
We are still operating under an agreement. There is no contract. There's been a contract submitted approximately 2 years ago to BSA from city attorney. I do not believe there's been any reply off of that contract that was submitted. Granted, it got submitted right before COVID hit. And you know how crazy 2020 was. 2021, don't know. It's time to follow up.
Sounds like to me, just what I'm hearing outside too, maybe there's some desirability that could be had of BSA and what they provide and all, and have just had a couple of, I've heard Herbert's had to send some ambulance over.
Very rarely, but they did. They have.
And
Amarillo sent ambulances down to transport as well.
AMR?
Yes, AMR. And I will tell you this, from what I know, and don't want to seem like I'm speaking for BSA or against them for them. I'm not an employee of. They're just like us. They're understaffed, and they're doing what they can. Staffing is a big issue. It's not just the fire department. It's we all know that staffing is an issue.
Dennis, remind us, BSA is doing City of Canyon proper as well as rural
Randall County. Generally, they have 2 ambulances in service at all time. They do tend to take an ambulance out of service. I've heard it on the radio to make transfers. So that leaves 1 ambulance between Canyon and Randall County.
And one individual told me in instance of that was an issue that there was a wreck south of Unmarker and said 3 injured and then we had 1 ambulance in service and it took 50 minutes to get to a child.
There have been delays. Once again, that's why the fire department is the EMS first responder, so that we can get there and start providing that critical care that they need. We may have to wait a little bit for transport, but at least they're getting at minimum basic life support care, if not greater, if we have a paramedic or EMT advanced on scene as well.
And I guess that's a question in the back of my mind. If we had the ambulance service doing something different, would that help us if they were providing more support?
I think this would be a great topic for another work session.
I think there's a lot of questions.
There are. Sure. Yes. And you're right, EMS, 64%, last you looked. About 64% of our call volume are emergency medical services calls related. That's us going out, and whether we get there at the same time as the ambulance, ahead of the ambulance, a little bit after the ambulance, wherever, we are providing assistance to EMS for those calls. It's up to the EMS paramedic on whether they need assistance with that patient riding into the hospital. So if they do, that's at least one of our firefighters down now from our understaffed fire department that's headed to Amarillo on an ambulance to provide EMS.
I've heard a lot of times when EMS is dispatched, a lot of times they will call for support.
Yes.
Frequently.
Yes.
Especially if you have a large patient or
Yes.
someone that's falling.
Yes. Seems like since you brought up our calls for service on assisting with falls, are becoming more and more. I cannot tell you why that trend is increasing, but we do go out, lift the patient up. Maybe they have no one in their family available to come and help that person up off the floor, help them back up in the chair. If they're not injured, no harm, no foul. We're there to help. They're our citizens. We're there to help them. Make sure they're okay. If they don't want anything else, we go back home.
Well, I appreciate what you all do. And help with personal family incidents similar to that and all too. So I really do appreciate it. I'm just trying to figure out if there's ways to get relief and all too. But yes.
Even with take rule the medical calls out, just looking at your chart up there, I don't believe you could still roll 3 trucks and leave someone at the firehouse, correct?
No, I cannot.
So the ambulance calls are a burden on you because of the numbers and those kind of things.
I wouldn't say it's a burden on us. It's become the norm for us.
I mean, but it's hard. I mean, it wears on you greatly.
It's the majority of our calls.
But based on your numbers, you're still not able to meet the ISO rating, irrelevant of
Correct.
medical calls.
Oh, correct.
Even on Tuesday, Thursday, your best day, when you've got everybody there, you couldn't roll because you wouldn't have anybody left at the station, correct?
Right, but what you're saying, if we gave up EMS altogether, it still wouldn't improve the situation that's beforehand.
It's a totally different issue.
Yes. ISO is only fire protection. They can care less if you have EMS responders. They can care less if you have ambulances in your base. They are only looking for basically how well we can protect someone's property on insurance loss.
Why would you ever want to consider giving up?
Personally, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't?
No. It is a needed public service, and we are the ones with the city that are trying to deal with that. The only thing that we do not do, Commissioner, is, of course, we're not a transport agency. And that would be the next step the city would have to take to look at EMS at a greater level of care than what we do now.
So currently, there are 3 different services that are racing to my house when I have a heart attack, correct? The police department may be coming, you all are coming and the ambulance is coming.
Correct.
Police department might be busy, could be out in the county taking care of something. The ambulance could be in transport, or taking care of multiple people. And so then, at that case, I'm laying on the floor, the last group coming is gonna be you all, correct?
Yes.
And so, personally, when I'm on my floor, I like a race. I like the fact that there's three of you, three different entities are attempting to get there.
Law enforcement gets there ahead of us, and it is a controlled heart attack, and CPR is needed. Law enforcement's great, they get their AEDs out, they start with CPR. Fire department generally rolls in next, or EMS, and care is effortlessly transferred over. Law enforcement backs off, said, okay, it's time for me to do my law enforcement job now, not CPR. So it's a great team effort from all three agencies.
I currently have 2 ambulances that serve San Ramon,
BSA has 2 ambulances on duty 24/7, and one is stationed here in Canyon, and the other is stationed at their station at the Ramon County Sheriff's Office.
That's all nobody.
That covers Kenyon and all rural Ramon County, all of them.
During the day, when they have admin staff in who are also EMS certified, they can get another ambulance out, provided they're at the station and not tied up in admin meetings.
AMR does all the Ramon.
Yes.
Remember, the city of Ramon has a contract with them. AMR.
Correct. So,
So EMS is basically pretty important. Fire department.
yes.
You only have 2 intro.
And we have 2 transport to BSA. Like I said, BSA is, they are very good about calling for AMR when they know that their ambulances are tied up. We can get an ambulance headed our way. West side, south, Hereford's been utilized some. Hereford has come into the city to help coverage during some big events before as well.
I guess I'm getting at the valuable service that we keep doing.
Yes.
Just to get into the situation.
Just look, I know we talked about a lot of calls for service, just to kind of give you a comparison since 2018, you can see how our calls are increasing. Nearly 300 extra calls this past year over 2020, calls for service. How do we compare locally to some similar sized cities? Borger, back in 2020, had 1,318 calls. Pampa, and both of those are all career department, that means they're 24/7, non-volunteer. They ran 1,757 calls. Dumas, which is a combination, much like we are, except they do have career staff that's 24/7, 24 hours, 7 days a week. Plus, they are supplemented with volunteers. They ran 814 calls.
Can you go back, how many people are on staff with Border and Pampa, you know, off the top of your head?
We have 23.
Full-time?
Yeah, including chief and
Just the chief?
3 shifts. I'm trying to remember, 6, 5, 6 on shift.
In Pampa, I believe, from what I know about Pampa, they have 2 different stations, and I believe one station's staffed with at least 3 full-time, the other one's 4 full-time. So that's 7 per shift, times 3 would be 21. They probably have a couple there to help with sick leave, vacation, things swing around. So like I said, started off this, 6 is what we need right now. That's what we need to get our ISO back up, what we need to be able to get all the trucks out for fire calls that we need to get out. But it's not our ultimate goal. Our ultimate goal, my ultimate goal, to obtain 24/7 staffing, you were asking about the numbers. I need 18 career line staff on 3 rotating shifts. That would be 1 lieutenant on each shift, 5 firefighters on each shift. I will vow to keep a reserve of 20 to 25 volunteer firefighters here, or reserve firefighters. We cannot do it without our volunteers. We still need them even after we meet this 24/7. Unless y'all are wanting to go the route of having a fire station within a mile and a half of each rooftop that's in this town, and have that fire station staffed 24/7 with 4 guys. We talked about that, but that's a lot of money, lots and lots of money. Ultimate goal, 24/7 staffing with 18, maintaining 20 to 25 volunteer firefighters as reserve, and our command staff, which we have now, I consider them command staff, Assistant Chief Whitfield, Captain Reed, myself, on our full-time command staff, we remain 8 to 5 Monday through Friday under that staffing model. This is our ultimate staffing goal for the city of King. So once again, why 6 career firefighters right now? We'll bring our full-time career staff to 10 line firefighters. It will be able to, after we orientate the new firefighters, it will be able to split our career staff into 2 shifts, covering 12-hour shifts. It will take some coordination with HR and working through this, but basically, each shift is going to work 3 12-hour shifts a week, and then alternate Sundays on 8 hours. That will give them 80 hours for 2 weeks. That's without overtime, 80 base hours of work during a 2-week time frame. It's going to allow us to have some additional full-time staff to assist with callback during the day. Even if you are off shift, there's going to be probably 2 off that off shift that's going to be on call to come in and assist during the day. Remember, during the day is when we have the toughest time making our calls, because the majority of our volunteers are at the full-time job. They're here today, you can talk to them about it. Talk to them about it if you want to. Ask them questions. Additionally, it's going to help maintain a work-life balance for our career staff. Can't remember if I mentioned before, but the guys that we've hired recently, within the last year and a half, they come on full throttle. They're ready for it. They're ready to tackle the issues. I can already see them getting worn down. And what happens when you get worn down at work? Find someplace else to do it. So that's not good for retention. We're going to be able to better achieve minimum staffing for structural firefighter or structural fire response. Just a reminder that the type of fire department we are under, we strive to follow a document called NFPA 1720. It is the standard for combination and volunteer fire departments on minimum staff and equipment deployment. That's what ISO is referencing, is 1720 right here. That's what they're looking at. One of these days, if we ever get to a majority career department over volunteer, there's going to be another standard that's going to look at the city of King, and that's 1710. That's for career fire departments, and it gets a lot more stringent. That's what Amarillo has to follow on all their structural fire responses, or they strive to. So, with that said, 6 is what I'm asking for. 6 is the minimum I need. Like I said, it's not a padded number. That's what we need right now. Joe?
Megan, will you pull up the options? So, I think it would be highly advantaged to apply for the safer plan, no matter what we decide. No matter how many positions y'all decide to go with. Our recommendation, as Dennis mentioned, is 6. Option A, I call the balanced and logical approach, would be the next 3 budgets to allocate 2 full-time firefighters on each budget. That would be an increase in taxes of approximately $150,000 each year. And we will look at that here in a second, everyone. That's option A, 2, 2, and 2, and our recommendation. Another one that that piece is possibly moving from 30,000 overtime budget to 60. Dennis has been very diligent with Vince and Captain Root of trying not to exceed their overtime since we have implemented it. It is very lean, being 30,000, and so just so you all remember, and I know Kelsey, just so you know, we just implemented overtime a year ago to help on some of it. We were accruing a significant amount of compensatory time that will never, ever be able to be taken because of how lean this staff is. Vince has got, do I even want to ask?
436 hours.
436 comp time hours. So when are you going to be able to take that time off?
Okay.
Well, if Vince left or retired, we would have to pay all that time and a half probably. For comp time.
That's correct.
Yeah, Dan, what are you at comp time?
I think they brought it back down. I think it is at 320. No, on 420.
Just so y'all are aware, we have to legally keep, Dennis, you remember, we have to legally keep comp time hours under the federal regulation of.
325.
How much?
I think it's 325.
325? For emergency services, and then everybody else is like 210. 220. And so I had to pay down some of Dan's and Vince and somebody else. I had to pay it down. That's federal law. So I had to pay some of that down. Option B, oh, and then the fire marshal, like he said, is not funded, and it's not factored in there. Option B is the 3-2-1, three firemen first year budgeted, 2 the next year, and then 1 last year. So reverse effect with the same conditions as I previously mentioned. And then option C, this makes me think of Cody Jones, as he mentioned it last time. I call it the deep end, just doing all 6 in the first year. Obviously, I don't think that's the goal, but I did call it the deep end. So you do 6 the first year, 0 and 0. There obviously are advantages to that. You know, obviously you can do some things, flexibility and buy some equipment. So those are the kind of options that staff is prescribed.
Are these 3 options, is it taken into consideration getting the grant? Or
Yeah,
not?
yeah.
But that says not grant funded.
Yeah, there are certain, like fire marshal's not grant funded, and obviously overtime is not grant funded. So those 2 things have specifically called out that are not grant funded that we do need to take a look at.
So in a sense, option A, we're still asking for the 6, but
Right.
we have 3 years to encumber the money for those 2 positions each year.
After the
So by the 3rd year, we have the funding
Yeah.
for all.
So we don't wait till the last year, Randy, to budget 6.
I understand.
And you might budget for that, but then you might be able to use that money to buy their equipment. First year, when you budgeted for 2 people, you're not taking on that cost, but you start buying everybody's equipment that year. The second year, you've still got some
So
funds.
by the time the money runs out, you're prepared to pay for it.
You've got it.
That's correct. So it just, saver grant falls off, and then
Pick it up.
our tax revenue falls in.
Who does the grant? Do you do the grant? Or who?
It'd be a combination between city management, fire department, and finance to administer that grant.
So how does the grant work under option A? You still get 3 years on each position?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. We would, if we apply for the grant, Mayor, we'd get all 6. This is just how are we gonna switch from the grant to bring them full time? Because once the grant's over, if we don't have the funds to do it, I'm laying 6 people off. And so, this
Probably
is,
paying back some money.
well, I don't know if we'll pay back some money.
The grant.
I don't think we have to pay back money.
Okay.
I do not believe that. I think Dennis and I have talked about it.
But the filing for the application and accepting the grant is saying that the city of Canaan is willing and ready, and they're gonna be ready at the end of 3 years to take on these 6 positions.
Is it pretty likely that you would get it? I mean, is there?
We are setting in a high category of everything they're asking for.
I don't think we've ever applied for one. I don't think we've ever applied for one.
So it's pretty sure we can.
Yeah. It's highlighted.
Personally, I'm 80–90% sure, if not better than that, because we are the type of department they're looking for to help out.
On the next page, this, if we hired the 6, and all 3 of those options were for 6, it's just how do we, take a bite at a time. This would be the new staff layout. Dennis kind of went over this a second ago, but currently on 4 full-time firefighters, we would go to 10. So all 6 would go to full-time firefighters. And then we have our 1 part-time that was mentioned, our command staff. We still have Gina as admin assistant. And hopefully, we would look at fire marshal over those 3 years to help get that addressed. And then we have 2 part-time techs that chief, taking us to 15 full-time. We are currently at 8. Is that right, Dennis? 8, we have 9. So that's what the new staff layout would look like on the 6. Let's talk finances. You zoomed in on that a little bit, Megan. Mr. Wright helped prepare this, so Mr. Wright, feel free to jump in anytime you want to, sir. Sure. You can see currently 8 part-time to go 10, 12, 14. So that's what it looks over the 3 fiscal years, FY 23, 22, 23, 23, 24. That's what it looks like, and then cumulatively. Compensation-wise, there's where we're at. Salaries of 509, eventually going to 828, 958 in the final year. And then part-time just stays stagnant. And then with benefits underneath, retirement insurance and all that, with a total of going from currently at 856 to 1.3, which is approximately a cumulative increase of what you see as 458, 446. And you see each year's annual increase would be about $150,000. So here's the hard part trying to describe this. I asked Mr. Wright what that would look like in a tax increase. So being that our valuations, our tax values have been so up the last several years, we have to take into account the valuation of this year. The valuation of this year from last year went up exactly 11.42%. So we had a really big jump in values this last year. We actually, in this budget, lowered our tax rate and still generated additional funds. I think that's on the other sheet, Megan. Go to the first tab. So we lowered the rate and still had a 7% revenue increase right there. Technically 11 in M&O with a less than rate, and that generated $240,000. And we lowered the rate. So, but you can see how our values in the yellow box jumped by 11.45%. So, in what you're about to see in the projections, I have created a static, or Joel created a static tax value that is unchanged. It is definitive that our values will go up at least 4 to 5% in my prediction. It went up 11.45 last year, and it went up about 3.49 the year before. And that's based on the freeze tax ceiling you have there. So it went up over 14 to 15% tax value in 2 years. So let's go back, make it to the other sheet. So please take that caveat for what it is. Based on a static, non-changing tax value, it would be approximately 13% increase, 13.82% increase percentage in dollars. Right there. You can see the breakdown of those exactly. However, staff really understands that more than likely, if we just keep the same numerical rate with the rising values, it will be less impactful than what is prescribed there. I don't think that is realistic based on our current valuation trends. Mr. Wright, would you like to add anything to this conversation?
No, I'd agree with that. I'm just being really conservative with using that static valuation. Just to say this is what we need to do on the tax rate in order to raise that $150,000. And I do agree with what John said. Even though we would be using the SAFER grant to pay those salaries and benefits, during these 3 years while we're building that tax revenue up, we'd be using that tax revenue for buying equipment in preparation for these new steps.
We've hired 2 to 3 individuals each of the past 2 to 3 years.
Or one this year, 2 last year.
But
We won more new positions than we had a hiring of a vacated position.
But we've hired additional staff. We hired 2 for street this year. I
Yeah,
mean,
we
we've hired multiple staff along the way. If we have not increased taxes to hire those folks, we actually lowered taxes.
Tax rate, yes.
Tax rate and hired additional staff.
So I guess that's a question in my mind too. If we're increasing 2 to 3 for those 3 years, could 1 a year out of that just be out of the normal budget be going to the fire department, and your tax increase part just be for the other 3?
Literally, I think if you, between Joe and I, we feel like if Canyon, Texas, USA, appraisals continue to do what they're doing, we're valued here. I understand there could be a recession. I understand those things could happen. We think that we will continue to progress. There won't be a tax increase at all as far as for these positions. They'll just be absorbed into the budget as the budget grows, as our community grows, as we get more rooftops and receive more taxes.
A significant portion of the revenue increase in taxes is new development that was not on the tax rolls the prior year. Those are coming on and paying their share in taxes. Most of the people that are not being affected are current residents. There was a little bit this year. There was some increase in home values appraisals. I know my house personally, I know several others did. But I went up $8 in City of Canyon property tax. But most of that revenue is being generated from are new commercial and new houses that are not on the tax roll the prior year. So they did not exist on the rolls at all. Those are where most of our increases are coming. We're keeping the same numerable tax rate.
Because we haven't come forward on these positions that you all have hired in the last 2 to 3 years. We haven't asked for a tax increase to hire those folks.
We
Our
try to keep-
additional revenue has taken care of the hiring of those positions.
That's correct, John.
But back again, the tax parts, whether you talk about the no new tax rate or you talk about the existing rate. And you know, so really where that works best, we really have to stay with the existing rate and.
We lowered the rate this year and still hired. It's not the best plan, we would agree with you, but we did. We lowered our rate and still had the revenue to hire.
Commissions for the last half decade plus have tried to keep the same numerable rate. It's been very much in that regard. The one good thing is we've been able to drop significantly the debt service rate, almost in half. The first time the debt service rate came on, it was 0.7 something. It has dropped like 50%, Joel, since that rolled on, and it's, you know, we're lowering that down to what reality is on that service payment to the cap. So it's dropped on that side. And we do have the years broken down where you can see them tabs, and we can send those out later, but it just shows them each year. Ultimately, it just comes down to about 150, like Joel has described above, and so you can see the staffing levels on there, going there, and then the ultimate build out there.
Can we go back to the alternatives and alternative? So do we get more dollars from the SAFER grant if we do all 6 firefighters now?
Or you get the money to cover the expense of hiring those 6.
Versus if you do it 2, 2, and 2, the second 2 years, you just get paid?
It would be getting 6 at once.
Right.
But on the city's financial planning end, we're covering the first 2 positions in 1 year. The next year, we're covering 2 more positions, so now we're covering the cost of 4. The third year, we're covering the cost of the final 2 positions of the 6 in the grant. So that at the end of that time, all 6 salaries are included in the budget by that time, correct?
That is
So
correct.
you're getting all 6 up front?
That's
Yeah,
correct.
we're getting all 6 up front. We're just taking 3 years to, instead of jumping in and start saying, okay, taxpayers, hit me with this much right here. We're taking 3 incremental steps.
But is the SAFER grant, is it planning for 3 years on all 6 firefighters under all 3 of those scenarios, or?
Those scenarios are only based in-house. The SAFER grant, if Dennis applies for 6 positions, he gets funded, we get to hire them in October 1 of 2022.
The options are how the city wants to move forward in looking at being able to cover those 6 positions after 3 years.
But really, either way, we'll get paid for all 6 positions for
Yes.
3 years. We won't be out that expense for 3 years.
That's correct. You were 100% right there.
It's
Is
however.
that answering your question?
As finance starts requesting draws on our grant, that's how we start getting reimbursed. We provide proof that we've expended this amount of funds. FEMA sends us that amount of money that we've asked for.
We did this for the police department. John,
Like
if you will.
6, 7 years ago.
6, 7 years ago, I think we did 3 policemen, very identical programs.
Well, I'd like to hear from the volunteers, see what y'all think on your volunteer.
They'll all jump up at the same time. You'll have to call them out, Paul.
Well, they can draw straws, and we got the short straw passes.
We all know we all know that we need more staff. I mean, it's inevitable. There's times I can't come. There's times when nobody else can come. We know that we need the staff, and we are okay with it. We know it's going to happen. We can't fulfill what we have to do now. So, I mean, we know paid staff is going to come. We know that Dennis has promised we're going to still have our volunteer positions as long as we want it. So as far as I'm concerned, and the few I've talked to, we're okay with it.
I think that it's something that the city has needed for a long time, to add the extra personnel. I don't think it's going to decrease any of the participation of volunteers. The volunteers that we have now, they do it because it's one of the ways they feel like they can help the city out. You know, it's just something that they do where, like, being in the Lions Club or the Kiwanis Club or something like that. It's just a way that they can provide help to the city. So I don't think it's going to affect the volunteers in any. It in a way I think will help them, that they know that, you know, when we go out on a fire, we're going to be having more firemen participating, and it's going to make our job safer. That we're not going to have to just depend on the handful of people that show up now. We will have additional people coming that will make it safer for us.
Tim, you're one of the newer guys. What do you think?
I agree with Wiley, Dennis, Vince, Steve, and Dan, everybody. I mean, we do need the help. I mean, it's the guys. I'm real good friends with all of them. The career guys, and they're wore out. A lot of volunteers can't show up, so they're taking on the load. So we do need guys. There has been a lot of talk with some volunteers that they feel like they're getting pushed out, which is not the case with Dennis's word. You know, we just need them. I mean, just like what everybody said, there's really no choice. I mean, you have to get more guys.
Being
Or
a
you're gonna run out.
younger guy coming in.
Kind of old, but.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. I'm not calling Wiley and Stephen.
We're seasoned.
Seasoned. Thank you. I like that. Why? Why do you want to do it?
What about it?
Why do you want to be a volunteer fireman?
Never thought I would be a volunteer firefighter. My career is completely different. Came to fire, ran on my daughter when she was, how old was she, Vince?
Not very old, month or two.
3 weeks old. And then after that, my wife was like, "Hey, you should join." I didn't know Kane was volunteer. I grew up in a bigger city, so there's no volunteer fire departments. So after that, I just was like, "Oh, I'll try it out." And I just want to get back. I mean, it feels, something inside. I just enjoy coming up, doing stuff, hanging out with guys. I'm a transplant. When I was here 3 years and I didn't know one person. I work from home, so now I just do it because I enjoy it. I love helping out.
We probably are getting to the time where we need to move into the regular meeting. I would like to dig into that topic more at some point too, and just, what are things that we can do to make life better for you all as volunteers. I think Kenyon, I wish Commissioner Jones was here. We'd had discussion. How do you get people, not just for the fire department, to get people to volunteer to do more? And we were thinking other opportunities to volunteer. And I know in Lions Club, it's great when several of us are in Lions Club here too. But how do you get back to the community? And I think it makes the community so much a better community if we do have volunteers and all too. And you talked about it, the pinnacle up here, I think, is volunteer firefighters, what you all give, and really appreciate that. And from that standpoint, I would love to see if we can figure out ways, you know, one up on out, I don't know if we can do it legally. It sounds like Hereford pays water bills. You know, I think those are some of the pieces I'd love for us to explore more and see. And Chief, maybe this is a conversation for another work session and come up with some ideas. You know, what are some of the things we could do different on too. So.
I'll look forward to it.
Okay.
Based on what you've shown up here today too, Joe, it's also logical that even without the SAFER grant, that we could pick up 2, 2, and 2.
I think so, even
without a problem. The SAFER grant would be a great thing, but picking up 2, 2, 2 over a 3-year period, a commitment to that was very doable.
Yes. The reason, you know, we didn't do 2 this year is we really needed the street to get that back to 7. So we were able to do that.
I'm just going to throw my thoughts in. County Texas continues to grow. And as it grows, we generate more money. What are we going to do with that? What's the best use of that money? The best use to me of that money is taking care of that growth. How do you take care of that growth by protecting the community? It's a thing called growing pains, and you have to realize that you can't just grow and make money without us continuing to have to pay for it. You know, you look at, we are, I think it's pitiful how we are comparing us to Tampa and New York. That's why I ask you. You know, we're getting about basically the same amount of calls that they are. For the staff, for all that. I think it's time that we're going to have to make some decisions.
So you're making a motion?
We're in a work session right now.
Oh, so later.
You know, one other dynamic I think we really need to dig into as well is just the dynamic with the county. And I think, you know, the amount of fires or calls our department goes on for the county. And I know there's reimbursement there. How does that all look and work in the long term? You know, one piece that I think we just become aware of too is that there's a sales tax piece for emergency services that the county is getting inside the city limits for our new subdivisions. My thought is the only reason the county should get that money is if they provide the services in those subdivisions. So I think that's a piece we need to dig into and figure out what that looks like. We just need to dig into it.
There are many issues that we can discuss. I mean, other issues, yes.
Okay.
We'll have a recommendation when we get the consensus on this item.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Old Chief. Yeah, let's take about a 3-minute break. It's 4:45, and we'll come back and get started at 7. Thank you all again. I appreciate you much. And Captain Rude, again, I appreciate personal and family. So, you know, when you've got a family member down on the floor and you're there fixing up. So, anyway, I appreciate what you're doing.
You're ready.
Obviously, I'm not. Well, there's some things. I do.
Yes. How long? I can give me your email address, but we can send you that process.
Oh, that'd be cool.
That's why I've asked you to take the I had 3 emails. Great. Check it out.
Capital M, capital C.
Again?
Capital M, capital C. Sorry about that.
No, it's me.
Dan, you had a somewhat successful weekend.
LLO. Yeah, I don't too bad.
Successful is enough for love.
Very correct.
You don't have to do it.
Everything else is,
15 cars. They pulled a big old ditch right there in front of the path with a 3/4 ton pickup. And so those two players that couldn't get it, they couldn't get to 15. So the first 2 groups, obviously, went off the came up there. So run out there and go, and one guy moves me out there. He looks at me and says, I went, okay, who do I talk to? You're like, I don't know, maybe that guy's name. I said, what you doing here? And he goes, so he, this other guy turned around, I go, hey, can you move 6 feet in either direction?
Good, how are you?
His car is like,
How's it going?
all this news, I've only been here for like 20 minutes. Okay. So all I knew was like 2 more groups coming in. When you go to 14 groups, get to 50 groups. Really? I'm like,
They're living in a motel.
they were looking for a water or something. Las Vegas said, no, we can't. Good, how are you? Which, to me, in my mind, that could be anywhere from 20 minutes to 5 hours. But next time, we didn't hear you. Hey, we got it. He may not be as tall as you know. I'm ready for them. I am glad they're not. I hope so. There's a lot of them door. I'm glad it's not PC. Well, it'll be over soon. It will be, surely.
Hey, Corey, you might have me, they just come with us. What? They kidding. In other words, you're not sharing. I'll get Maddox over here and rub your shoulder. I'll get Maddox over here to rub your shoulder.
Don't worry about it.
But I was kind of pieced in the middle. They're getting me an exit while I had a chance.
Where'd he go? I just saw him.
Hey, Doug, he's going to sit by me, but he's trying to stay away from Parkway.
No, I don't remember you being pushed in the side.
What? Yeah, I'll look over to you every now and then, and we'll lead in and discuss new points. How long do you think this is going to last?
All right, looks like we've got everybody back again, so let's start back at it. And at this point, we will be at item number 6, public comments from interested citizens. Chris? That takes us to item number 7. Consider and take appropriate action on proposal to apply for SAFER grant funding for up to 6 full-time firefighters for the Canyon Fire Department to be funded for 3 years. Joe?
Mayor, it is staff's recommendation to apply for the SAFER grant for 6 new additional positions for this funding cycle, with a plan to replace and bring those 6 positions over the next 3 years.
Chief?
I want to make a motion. I think we've already heard it.
Okay.
We're ready to go. I want to make a motion that we authorize city staff to move forward with the application for the SAFER grant.
For the 6 positions.
For the 6 positions that will be funded for 3 years.
Second.
Have a motion second. Is there any further discussion?
I just hope that y'all stay up with that, but the mayor talking about the county and also about if there's any way we can help. There's got to be ways that the city can help with your volunteers. So just look at all the options on that. Just don't let them two things fall through the cracks. That's your appreciation.
Paul, I do know the mayor mentioned the water stuff. I do have the city attorney looking at that recommendation. If anybody else has recommendations on that, we would love to hear.
I'd like, one thing, look into the retirement for the volunteers, if we can anyway, maybe donate a little bit more to the city, whatever match we're doing, I don't know what we're doing, but look into all that, at least everything.
I've been for that for a lot of years. I've been a proponent of that for a lot of budgets.
Yeah, we need help on that.
Pension, you're on that board.
Oh, yeah?
No, Randy.
No, Randy. Okay, you look good. Don't let them drop it then.
I'm rolling off.
No, we're reappointing you tonight. It's on the agenda to reappoint you tonight.
That's all, just keep the options open, there's gotta be ways we can help with all that.
Other question, you guys, I know I gave out the ISO report. It's coming. Would y'all like Mike Peach to come here and have a presentation on the ISO report in his findings? Or are y'all good with just?
I don't know if it's necessary. I think we got.
Do you? Yeah, I thought it might be enlightening to kind of understand ISO, because it is a big thing. I don't know, just, and we can read this, but I personally, I think it find it interesting to know exactly how it works. And
Mike's a wealth of knowledge.
I know ISO rating of a 2, I think last time I heard, there's only 9% of fire departments that fit in that category. Does that sound right?
John and I looked at it earlier today. Out of all the ones in Texas,
There were like 70.
yeah, there's like 69 ones. It's the lowest.
2s, there were
320.
28.
There was the 4th
Yes.
highest. It was the 2s. The highest ones are 5s, and then it's 6, and then it's 4, and then 9. 9 is the highest. And then 2. 2 is one of the higher ones, could be the highest. I've got that somewhere. I can definitely share that. But I talked to Dennis in advance about having Mike come if y'all want. You know, he's our consultant. You know, we budgeted to hire him to help navigate us and be an advocate when ISO does come. Mike will be an advocate for the city of Canyon on the ISO rate review. Correct, Chief and Vince? So
I'd be up to the hair front, even if it's a 10-minute presentation on ISO. Randy, that's what I'm good with that. All right, is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. The motion passes. All right, thank you.
thank you, City Commission.
Okay, item number 8, consider and take appropriate action on second and final reading of resolution number 40-2021, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Canyon approving a project funding agreement between Absolute Restaurant Operations LLC and Canyon Economic Development Corporation relating to direct financial assistance and job creation incentives for a new business, Mickey's Place. The business will be located at 1512 Fifth Avenue, Suite 102-14.
Evelyn came down sick. She came down sick with a stomach flu late this weekend, and so she won't be here. Sorry to introduce this. This is our second reading of this. Nothing has changed since our previous. The summary of the project is in the agenda memo. 30 to 40 employees, 7 days a week, and then funding granted at $200,000.
I make a motion that we adopt resolution number 40/2021.
Second. Have a motion, a second. Is there any further discussion or questions on it? If not, all in favor of the motion signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. All right, item number 9 is considered to take appropriate action on second and final reading of resolution number 41-2021, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Canyon approving the project funding agreement between MAP Food and Canyon Economic Development Corporation relating to business retention and expansion project for Buffs located at 2201 4th Avenue, Canyon, Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Similar, no changes on this one. Just to recap, everybody knows where Buff's at. The guy that owned the building next to it, Gary, do you remember what's his name?
A.J. Peters.
A.J. Peters. With the transactions of that big building of A.J. Peters, Buff's has acquired the building that they touch, and they are going through the renovations to make it more of a sit-down restaurant, expanding their capacity to 4,000 square feet. Some of y'all may know that's Colton Row, and his Buff's has been very successful in town, very welcomed in our community. The funding granted amount is the same as the previous one at $200,000.
I move that we adopt resolution number 41/2021.
Have a motion, second. Is there any further discussion? I will be abstaining on this one. All in favor of the motion signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Confirm that Randy was the second.
Okay, item number 10, to consider and take appropriate action on resolution number 01-2020-2022. Unit number 10, annexation, a resolution of the City of Canyon, Texas, setting the date, time, and place for public hearings, and providing for notice of public hearings in regard to the proposed annexation of property within the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the City of Canyon at the request of the owner, Coolman and Sons LP, a Texas Limited Partnership, acting by and through Herbert Coolman and Sons Inc., a Texas corporation, as general partner, acting by and through his duly authorized president, Michael H. Coolman. Ben?
Thank you, Mayor.
Like I said, this is the staff received a voluntary annexation request from Permanent Land Surveyors, acting as representative for Coleman and Sons LP. This would be the location of the next phase of the Canyon East development, just due south and adjacent to that Canyon East development right along I-27. 12.91 acres will be annexed. Latest preliminary concept plan shows 24 half-acre lots. There's some question about sewer availability down in that location. So at this point, preliminary plans look like they'll probably be on half-acre lots with septic systems. So getting to the resolution, what we're doing here today is we're looking at adopting resolution 01/2022, which is just simply setting up the annexation calendar. So by state law, we need to adopt this annexation calendar and go through certain processes. So you see you have in your package, you have resolution 01/222. And that resolution will adopt the annexation calendar as follows. January 10th, adopt the annexation calendar today. January 12th, post the annexation calendar on the city website. And Chuck will send out notices to those entities, those government entities listed there. January 30th, publish a notice of public hearings in Canyon News. The Friday before the public hearings, post the notice of the public hearings according to the Texas Open Meetings Act. And on February the 14th, our next meeting, we would hold 2 public hearings. And you guys have heard this before, but I'll rehash a little bit. Our Texas Local Government Code, under Chapter 43, requires adoption of the ordinance not more than 40 days after the first public hearing and not less than 20 days after the second public hearing. The issue we run into is we can't make that work under our twice monthly city commission meetings. So we hold both public hearings on one day. And according to the TML, that's an acceptable practice. And we've done that in the past. So those 2 public hearings will be held on February the 14th. February the 4th, post notice of action upon the proposed ordinance pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act. The direction will take care of that probably before our final meeting. And on March 7th, we would consider take action on adopting that annexation ordinance. So moving on down the line, we have the legal description, we have the service plan included with that. Chapter 43 also requires that the city prepare and present a service plan. And those are the services that the city is able to provide at the time of annexation. Pretty standard stuff. The only one that's a little bit unusual is you look down at our sanitary sewer service. Dan took some time to look at that and modify that to talk about, once the engineers look at that, there may be some instances where they cannot serve those lots with gravity flow, so there may be a need for those septic systems, like I mentioned earlier. The service plans there, you have the letter from Mr. Furman requesting annexation, the petition of the landowner, which Chuck prepared for voluntary annexation. And that also includes the service plan. Again, needs to go with that. And then, yeah, I think Gretchen way ahead. You did a great job, by the way. That's you. Sure. It's Megan. It's Megan. Megan's done a great job. Not that it's unusually good.
Who does a better job, Megan?
After all that, you forget I said anything. Anyway, this is the survey of the location, and next I just presented an aerial photo that I put together just showing where this location is going to be. So you can see like I said, we had this preliminary concept plan. I think they submitted back in 2020, and that showed that to have 24 half-acre lots on, I think, 3 cul-de-sacs. Now, again, that's preliminary. That may not be the way this works out, but that's the thought at this point. So that's pretty much it. The next step will be, as I said, we will have the 2 public hearings in February. Then March the 7th, we'll have the final action. We'll take those public hearing notices.
This should be the final unit in Canyon.
Should be, but who knows? Who knows? Maybe the legislature. It'd be great if we could, but at this point in time, that's
We kind of changed our approach to the half acres now, where they would have to be curved together.
and these guys will be curved together.
It's their choice.
These guys will be curved together, they don't, he's pretty adamant, Larry.
I was thinking we were pretty much saying that we have to do too.
We would allow it, but I mean, they did their whole development curve, and I see the change it. They've not illustrated as such.
Yeah, I think staff is pretty opposed, very opposed.
Yeah, especially with the whole 350 lots are already curved together.
Commissioner Rickens is not here, but he would
support that. We're pretty anti.
support
We're
curb
pretty
gutter.
anti.
Yes. Yeah, I'd be glad to answer your questions if you might have any.
All right, so I have a motion then to adopt resolution number 01-2222 as presented. I have a second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Opposed, like sign. The motion passes. Thank you. Okay, item number 11, consider and take appropriate action on PDC annual update and proposed 2022 rates. Casey?
Hi, good afternoon.
Get to say that.
I'm used to the lectern, that's honestly, since I've been here. Since y'all probably already read all this, right? So
Right.
we kind of skimmed through it. So we are 17% higher than 2020 in terms of rounds played. We had 35 charitable events, 19 junior events, and 18 Thursday night scrambles. So if you added all those up, there are more events than weeks of the year. So we've been busy. So we also picked up with WT. WT started hosting the Region 1-2A UIL everything. So we are the golf site for regional golf.
And we get paid for that too.
We do.
So this is the first year we did that?
This was the first year, yeah. So it's usually a 2-year contract, but it's all up to if someone bids for it. So it could be 4 years, 6 years, 8 years. The kind of whoever has it stays with it for as long as they can. So we'll see.
Was it good this year?
Yeah. It was really good. Actually, what was good about it was the weather was really terrible. So we had 88 players every day anyway. So, and then lots of spectator carts. So kind of eliminated what we called it. So it was very good. So our Growing the Game initiative is still very strong. At 69 kids participating in our junior league program. That was up from 52 the previous year. On the grounds, trees were trimmed, leaks in our irrigation system were patched. The golf course was awesome all year long. We heard nothing but compliments during the golf course, and that's all due to John over there. So we get a chance to great job. So, have any questions on the year in review or any comments? Okay. I'll keep flying along. In 2020, we did start a course master plan with Jeff Bauer and his firm. This was taken out of, we were taking $1 out of every green fee sold, and that paid for that. So our goals at the time were a new irrigation system and a new driving range. Our driving range is very short. It's very, it's just not good. Let's put it that way. Just not very good. So that was one of our main goals, was to figure out a way to put a big driving range somewhere on the golf course. Jeff, Mr. Bauer and his firm did a great job. The only way to improve our driving range was to move it, which would, in a big sense, move a lot of the golf holes as well, especially on the front nine. So we'd also get 18 greens built to the same specs, rerouting. We'd also include a new irrigation system with this water storage tank, new pump stations, and a water storage pond as well. Since that project has been completed, we really had to, based on the cost of it, we really needed to evaluate our needs versus our wants. This led us to what we really think we really need, and that would be a new irrigation system, a a new car barn, and then a standalone restroom on the front 9. So if you know, Randy, you've seen that back bathroom, haven't you? So you kind of want to match that on the front sometimes. So we average about 18,000 non-permit players a year. If we raised our green fees $10 on each green fee and collected this money into a fund, we can pay for these 3 priorities over time. The $10 would be collected over 3 years, so we want to raise them $5 in 2022, $3 in 2023, and $2 in 2024. At this time, we would have at least funded at least one of these projects. Probably the standalone restroom could be built in 3 years based on this funding here. So if you'll look at this sheet here, it says projects, projects to be completed. So you could see what we kind of came up with. So Plan A, you can see the cost there in red. Thank you, Megan. It's a really large number. That would be the whole thing, which would be really, really cool. I mean, as a golfer. I mean, it'd be really, really neat. But you can see that there's a $4 million difference between the bottom end and the top end, and there's just, because we could take a few things out and, do some things, but in the grand scheme of things, that's Casey's want, that's John's want, but we also understand.
So, maybe question for John, do we really need 18 greens rebuilt? Yes. What's the reason for that? Or
we have lots of root encroachment, tree roots in the greens.
Yeah.
That's the main reason. But some of them are still push-up greens that were built 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And then, the average life of a green is 20 years.
Yeah.
The green on number 3 was built in '89. So you do the math. Plus, it would give a uniform look to all 18 greens.
Keep the same kind of grass in the greens you have now, or would you just?
Well, it'd be bent grass.
You can only have big grass.
Only have.
So, Plan B has a few more things on there, but really, kind of go back to what I was alluding to earlier. Plan C, the irrigation system, the front 9 restroom, and the cart barn, which is, as you know, as you drive by, it's leaning. It's up all over on there. So it is. So,
What do we spend on those carts?
375, 400,000, somewhere in that area. So.
We need to take care of.
Yeah. So if you look, kind of keep just scanning down that projected course improvement fee income. So we're going to base it on the 18,000 non-permit rounds. As you can see, last year we had 19,295 of those. It was obviously up because we were up. You got to base it on the average. We're about 18,000. So we want to collect, $5 this year, $8 the next year, $10 in 2024 on that 18,000 non-permit rounds. Permit-wise, I'm also going to ask you that we raise our permits. It's been a while too. Just keep in mind, I don't even know if 3 of y'all were on this board the last time we raised our rates in terms of green fees. So that's how long it's been. So green fees and permits. So we actually want to take advantage of the permits being sold too, so we can go up and take $100 out of every permit sold and throw it into our fund as well to help fund these projects that we want to accomplish. So if you'll just kind of go on to the next page there, you see our green fees, our current fees and rates. At the right-hand side is our proposed rate. As you can see, we want to go up $5 on each one of them. And then the permits actually went up 20% on the permits. 20% on each permits. And then we'll take $100 off of every permit, so they'll fund as well. So I know that going up on these permits is gonna, well, just the mere thought of going up is gonna upset people. So we have a way to offer monthly or quarterly payment plans as well. They can pay for it that way. So cart fees, as you can see, there is no proposed rate increase for the carts because next year will be the year that we need to get carts. We've always just gone up every time we get carts. And that's a whole other discussion. So that's all I have. If you have any questions or comments, we'd love to.
Can I jump in?
Absolutely.
You can see on the spreadsheet where it says Powder Creek Golf Course at the top, down at the bottom, over the 3 years, by 2024, if we're able to hold the numbers, which I think are practical estimates as far as the number of rounds, that meant that Casey's green fee would be bringing in $193,000. And we also know that around 2025, Joel, I'm always confused on that year, 2025, 2026, we'll finish a bond at the golf course, which would free up additional funds there. A couple of $100,000 would be freed there. Now we're talking about close to $400,000 that could go toward a bond payment, which would get us $4 million. We would be able to fund that and pay for this work. Therefore, the current funding for the golf course would help pay for that, and then over the next 3 years, and the people playing golf would be ending up a little bit more and also paying for that because it would be coming from that green fee. And we feel like it's a solid plan. There was no way for us to get our head around anything much larger than that. Would we like to do a plan A or B? You bet, no doubt. But there is no model. Oh, there is a model, but the green fee would go up $50. Okay, so there's no way for us to
realistic model.
Yeah, to reach that goal. And so we feel like these are ways that would enable us to get what we need. Multiple conversations between John and Casey and I. A golf course is grass. We could have a golf course without carts. We could have a golf course without a clubhouse. We could have a golf course without bathrooms. It might be a mess. We could do away with all of those things. But if we don't have grass, which is an irrigation system, we can't have a golf course. And the question that the three of us have discussed 2 or 3 times is, does the commission and the city want to have a golf course in 10, 20, or 30 years? And if the answer is yes, we think the city wants to have a golf course, then this will enable us to have a golf course at that point in time. Kicking the irrigation system can down the road much further, John, is not a good thing. Would you agree with that?
Many words.
And we know that, we've got these 3 major projects listed here, but we feel like that after the 2nd or 3rd year, if that's going well, then those funds would then go to maybe build the bathroom. So that's a done project. We would use the funds that we have to do that. The 4th year, now we're reaching that 190 whatever thousand. Now we're starting to get close to making that payment. As we finish our payments on the golf course note, those funds come together, then let's go get what we need to put in the irrigation system and rebuild the cart barn.
The financing side, these would go directly into the capital improvement program, not into the operating budget. So they would be calculated in the CIP. Just as a reminder, our golf CIP is in with the water sewer CIP because they're both enterprise funds. That's the way Joel and I have discussed it at this point. But we do think what John says is pivotal. I believe the bonds are for when we bought the golf course from the previous owner, I think.
It's actually a refunding. Which we just refunded again recently in that same package we did about 2 months ago. 2013 series is for that reason.
We have this one portion out between the water, I think it's water and golf course together, the water and the golf course paying for this portion, so.
And we want to be able to provide the golfers with this plan, saying, this is what we're going to do, and this is where those fees are going, and this is what will come out of it, is a new irrigation system in these other two projects.
I believe our city to the north did something identical to this.
Yeah, they did, and actually they're still like a permit holder or pass holder up there, then instead of doing where we're taking it right when they pay, so they pay there's one permit they can buy that's like $2,600, and then they have to go in and pay, depending on where they play, whether it's Comanche or Ross, I think it's $3 at Comanche, $4 at Ross, so and I don't personally like that very much. I don't think that, we've already kind of got them in there, and at first that really took a lot of people out from going there because they weren't very happy with that they had to keep paying, even though they had paid for the golf already. So we kind of figured, this way, on a permit, a player typically averages about 75 rounds a year. So we're getting over $1 a round. We take 100 out for their permit right there. So we're going to do it anyway, and then the permits are still going up.
And how much are you figuring how much they're paying per round on the permits? Do you know?
I can't. I mean, on a couple people I have, and it's gotten to like $3 a round.
To me, that's one of my questions. The permit part too cheap, and especially as we have more demand for the course.
Well,
Without breaking them all down. We know it's 75 rounds on average. It's 75 rounds
Right.
per permit holder. We know that there are people that are paying significantly more than that, and we know that there's people paying significantly less than that. But we can't tell you that average. But if we'll hold that number of permits, this plan will allow us to raise those funds and look at that, and we can look at that. But this will get us in a position to raise those. And John and Casey have both stated, correct me if I'm wrong, that we would be able to remain operational with the replacement of the irrigation system, John. There might be some rerouting at various times in order to avoid a hole or do something along those lines, but basically 90% we would be able to remain open. Knowing that with some of the other things we'd like to do, you wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a big issue because I know some of the others have shut down to replace irrigation.
Well, they have redone their golf course, though. They rerouted, they rebuilt greens, fairways, tee boxes.
If we went to Plan A, we would be closed.
And actually,
And they did in Amarillo because when they switched back and forth, right? They did Wildhorse.
And going to your point about, is our permits too cheap? The problem with golf in the Panhandle is it's all cheap. And so we can't, I'd love to go up, a bunch, but then they're just going to go somewhere else.
Yeah, I was just looking, some of these others were increasing percentage-wise higher more than what we are in permits. To me, it makes it look the permits are really a bargain.
Correct. They are a bargain, and the fact that we sold, one year we sold less than 100, and it was like, okay, we'll take your green fee money.
But we anticipate a larger pushback from permit holders than we do from green fee.
Because the permit holders still think of themselves as the members of the club that existed before the city.
That's a stereotypical comment, but that's what we anticipate.
Yes. That's why I'm trying to choose my words correctly.
Someday when I retire, I'll not be one of those certain things. But to me, that does look like the cheap part, and if we're getting crowded and we can't get other folks on, then,
But that's not the case. Where we get crowded is with our calendar, with our event calendar. that's where we get crowded, but that's when we get 100 green fees for that 100-player event. I mean, we still give everybody an opportunity to play. They just might not get to play at 8:30 in the morning on August 1st, unless they play in the Knights of Columbus golf tournament, you know, but they can play in the afternoon.
So Casey, I really appreciate y'all bringing this in all too. Personally, you know, I've been asking for a long time when we're going to raise rates and all. I do wonder just a little bit, the $5 in 1 year, do you think there'll be sticker shock from that?
When
Yeah.
Doing it all.
When did we raise them?
It had to be, it was, I think, 2018.
It's been that long. In Amarillo, these are Amarillo rates from last year. There's a chance that those rates could change?
No, those will be
Are
the
they
rates
gonna
for
hold?
this year.
Okay. We're pulling we feel really comfortable that, yes, there will be people that will say, that's going up. What's $1? It's $1 to a lot of people, but it is also the fact that we're providing them with a plan of what we're gonna do with that. It's not going to operate the golf course. It is simply going to create a fund that will allow us to put in irrigation
This is
system.
golfer speaking, if you went for the same $10, but you split it different from just 5 in the first year, is that, I don't know, does that make any difference as far as the way you approach it?
From Casey, every year he should be going up.
Yeah, we should be. We are inexpensive.
I don't have a problem with the rate increase.
That shocks me.
Yeah, I definitely want a golf course here in 25 years.
That's the question tonight that we're asking.
I do. I want a golf course here in 25 years. I think the city of Canyon needs a golf course. Quality of life in this town is growth, just like it needs parks. I think you're doing the right thing down there.
Well, and the issue is, I mean, you can still have a golf course, but do we want it to be, we have a quality service out there, in a quality golf course, and we try to do the best that we can inside to give quality customer services. And it's, at some point, you know, it's just the same conversation about the greens. At some point, we all kind of remember what that golf course was like in 1999. 2004, and really before John came back when the city bought it, and we finally got city water, so on and so forth. You know, we've got to maintain, we've got to fix the problems too, and it can't be quick fixes like he's been doing for a long time.
If there's anything, city or any individual, doesn't anything, you don't have a capital improvement plan, it cannot last for a long time. And I think we need it. I think a capital improvement plan is two things that as well.
I have an ignorant question. Is there, can the golf course accept like private funding that, you know, could individuals get together and want to donate $170,000 for a golf course? I mean, for a restroom.
For a restroom?
For dairy, $170,000.
Yes.
For dairy.
Yes.
Never-
Yes.
yes.
It would never be turned down, yes.
Yeah.
So I don't have $170,000.
Well,
I was just curious.
Yeah, yes.
You find that person more time too.
Yeah, that's, the issue is,
You're gonna complain about $5.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
But that's okay.
They will, but not their names on a restroom. They might be like, oh, you know?
I think option plan C, you guys, is the most logical and sensible. In my gut, I would love to do B, and rebuild the 18 greens. I do think it's necessary. I just don't think, and I think these other guys would agree, pulling that other $2 million in front of those other 3 items that are so necessary. I just don't think we can get to that point.
well, if this is a home run, we can always revisit it.
That's exactly right.
Right.
I mean,
We'll come back, yeah.
So at some point, we're gonna have to do something to those greens. And, but we can always come back. But if we found a donor, somebody gives us $3 million, we can come in and this is what we're gonna do. That's all I got.
I'm glad we went down this road. I'm with Paul. I think this is the road we need to go.
And I think, to your point, the $5, it will be a sticker shock.
Sticker shock.
But I think, too, that
He told me-
they'll get rid of it. I mean, they'll get used to it, and.
He told me that you haven't gone up since 2018. Casey, as a logical person, that makes sense.
And that's why we put it on the front end, and it's lesser, and that's why we broke it down to $3 and $2. It's like, okay, we're not going up this, because we're getting closer, we're not going up as much. We're gonna get it to catch, we need to play some catch up too.
Coffee, they can just dance.
I'll make a motion that we approve the Belleville Creek Green permit late Creek for 2022.
Yeah, don't let her, I'll talk to her. I'm gonna have to get used to talking.
The permit holder should be involved.
That's right.
I ain't gonna throw that, because she might say something about you. Very regal today.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Thank you, Casey, John, appreciate y'all, and y'all do a fantastic job. Hopefully, John, we're headed towards that irrigation system. Not soon enough.
Great job, you guys.
Okay.
Okay, item number 12, consider and take appropriate action on RFQ for architectural services associated with construction of the police department and associated city hall renovations. John?
Yeah, one of the things you all talked about during our strategic planning session was the fact, and we brought up prior to that, was the fact that we wanted to pursue the possibility of building a new police department building somewhere here. And when the police department moved out, that we needed to do some renovations in here. And then as we move forward and hire 6 more firemen, we know it's going to be, the way the fire station looks needs to change too. And we've talked about those things. You all have heard us discuss that here. So at this point in time, in order to prepare to move forward, because one of the dates Joe has thrown out is a May of '23 bond election to go for that. So in order to stay on schedule, we are in the process. I've worked on it, and I've met today with Bo, and Bo will be working on it. An RFQ, or a request for qualifications for architects, because there are things that we'll need to do now to prepare us for that bond election. There will be a point in that RFQ that requests work from them that will take us to here, to this point, to prepare for a bond election. They won't go through and do a full architectural design. They will not do construction you won't do any of those things. We'll get as far as we need to go to have a schematic and be prepared for a bond election. May of '23, we will have that. We'll hold that bond election, and after the results of that bond election, you all will have a decision to make as a commission on whether you move forward at that point in time or not. If your decision is to move forward, then that firm that is selected would then move forward with construction design and managing that project and moving forward with it. And we would have those additional expenses at that point in time. But at this point in time, we are simply coming forward and asking for permission to put out that RFQ. We feel like that by February 1st, we'll have that on the streets. We'll give architects a month to work on that, architectural firms to work on that and get those back to us. And we'll start moving forward with that selection process so that we can stay on the calendar and be prepared for a May of '23, which today sounds like a long time from now, but that's just right around the corner for us. And we'll need months prior to the election, months of that work being completed so that we can put that information out to the taxpayers so that they have an opportunity to educate themselves on what that plan is and where we're going.
We will call that election a year from now.
Okay.
So, you release all the qualifications, will all these architectural firms be brought back to us?
Well, our plan right now is we're going to go through Paul, and we'll receive those. We'll have a scoring system. We'll talk to you all. Previously we've had 1 or 2 of you on that scoring system, on that committee, that selection committee, and we'll look at that, and then you will determine whether whether we come forward as a staff with the selection, or whether we have have them come forward to you all and make that selection like we did on the comprehensive plan. That's a decision we haven't made yet, and we don't need to make that selection at this point in time. At this point, it's really about just getting those applications in. And then we'll come back and talk to you all about the process. On how you want to handle
We'll
that.
have to vote to pick one up.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Ultimately, you will have to authorize the contract.
You know, I was visiting with Joe earlier today, part of that RFQ, they will give us some alternatives too.
Alternatives as in?
Looking at dollar amounts, like, say it comes back at $20 million, if we have hard burn on going out that much for tax.
I think we'll see all that through the process. I think we're not going to get surprised by that. Once we select a firm, they're going to know what we're trying to do, and I think we can work through that.
I think Gary's question is that cost overrun. Let's say hypothetically, I'm going to use a massive number. If $50 million was way too much for us to go out for a tax election, the commission would not feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, I think we're going to be asking taxpayers to approve an increase in their taxes.
You bet.
And so, the pool is 19%. I don't see us asking for much bigger increase than that. And figuring backwards, what can we get? What can we afford to?
Yeah,
and
I think
so,
we have to.
What are those alternatives? So, if it came back in, it's going to require a 40% tax increase. And we're probably saying, what were the other alternatives? Is there something to get us back in this range?
They have to, because they know that we're not going to go forward with a bond election if it's too high. So, of course they'll do that.
I think those are the things we'll work through.
Yeah, we work through that with them.
And we got it first, hey, here's our pending needs.
And Joe has already contacted our bond company, Jason. And so what we'll do with Jason is we can just get some estimates, and we'll go through and look at, okay, what's 10 million, what's 20, what's whatever million, or what's this percentage, what's that percentage, and we'll have those estimates, and then we'll try to work within. We can try to work within that model to begin with.
Perfect. I think that's exactly.
We're gonna know sort of what we think we can afford to begin with.
Yeah.
Begin with the end in mind, I guess you'd say, and if we can get there. It doesn't mean we can get there, but we can certainly shoot for it.
One thing I'll throw out too, that tax increase for the pool, because of our growth and our tax base, it's not costing us that big a percentage.
No,
It has reduced.
No.
I think we originally quoted it at 0.7, and now it's down to like 0.4.
Yeah, sure has.
It's been cut in half, and that was in 2016, Mr. Burns. Is that when that occurred? So within 5 years, it's already cut in half.
That may be more like a 8-10%.
Yeah.
Right.
And our property tax value has grown exponentially.
Correct. As we talked about tonight.
But I think a lot of that stuff we need to just troubleshoot back and forth with
If we-
a licensed professional that has a good working knowledge of building costs.
So we would just be open to a motion to move forward with that.
This is merely to release the RFQ.
Correct.
That's it.
So,
Have a motion?
I'll second.
Second, to release the RFQ for the new police department associated city hall renovations. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 13, consider and take appropriate action on development agreement between the City of Canyon and Canyon Midwest Housing Partners LP for development known as Canyon Lots.
Thank you. I think to ask John one more question.
Sure.
Does the chief get to be involved in this?
No, everybody, all the departments.
All the departments involved.
Yeah, and we've already done some space studies, we've already got a lot of information. In fact, Gary remembers when we did our space studies, we've done a lot of that already. We'll pull that out, and then it'll be back to what the department
And
does.
I know Steve and I.
Steve will be the lead as far as that.
Talk about some of that, to see what we've already looked at, bless you, to where we're going, so.
Yeah, no, everybody's involved.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, you're good.
Okay, item number 13, Joe.
Mr. Mayor, there's a handout, commissioners, right here. You'll pull that out. I wasn't able to get that in the packet, trying to get it finalized and received it today. This is kind of a rendition of concept plan of what the Canyon lofts are going to look like. My memo here has some basic snapshot. It is about a 72-unit multifamily, and this is being done through the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs, and they're using the housing tax credit program. They've been pretty aggressive in their timeline, to say the least. So we took action on the annexation a couple meetings ago, Danny, I believe. So property has been annexed. The main things that I have pulled out of the development agreement in here, and it's going to be 3-story as well, is that there's some key aspects. They will do a street extension of 17th. Megan, will you pull up Google Maps, please? We'll look at that. This is over by the high school, and so 17th would be extended from 23rd US Highway 87 to the west.
Where am I going?
Yeah, down by the high school, south 23rd. Keep going down south. A little further. Now turn on the satellite. You see 17th right there, Commission, that runs north of Canyon High School. That street on the east side would be extended over to the west to the lots below the sandy lot. And so that street extension will be extended to the west, approximately 1,200 linear feet. That cost will be borne to the developer. And we obviously, like usual, will inspect to make sure it meets city specifications. So that's first, they'll extend that street. Danny and I and staff have requested that the developers basically on the plat show this extension of 17th hypothetically, no, too far, hypothetically tying into 18th.
18th would come on that.
Yeah, it's kind of right in the floodplain, Paul, and so we have asked them to show what that would look like. They don't have to build it, but we did require them to show what it would look like. Danny, will you try to point that out?
Okay, here's where we're going to extend 17. Come down just a little bit.
A little further down. No. Get
So-
taller. Get taller.
What's happening?
There, right there. Stop.
Stop.
Okay, stop.
I got it.
Okay, there we go. Extend 17th out. You can see this is approximately where the property is going to be. It lines up with that pad. It's going to extend down. The bottom edge of that property is going to be along where 17th Avenue is going to come out. So 17th Avenue will extend out along the southern border of this acreage that we're talking about. And then 18th Street will extend down and meet up with it approximately right in here.
And that's being illustrated on the plat. There's nothing that they have to do. We had talked internally about it and just had that. We'd like, if that ever occurs, we as a city are actually going to extend 18th Street right to the end. We're 45% funded on that project, and that's the Kylie Heiner project. At the trees will come down. So it's not improved there. So we'll extend it to there and be built probably next year. And then if somebody comes in after, they'll have to extend it down and tie into 17 eventually.
So this apartment complex won't have access to come and go on 18th?
That is correct.
They will not.
Yes, so they won't. They'll just have the one end to 17th, and that's all that's required by code. Correct, Craig. I think we talked about that.
We'll have on plat 18th Street extension, but it won't be construction at this time. 17th was.
So that's on the street aspect. Second, water line extension, had quite a bit of conversation on that, where that's going to go. We're still working on solidifying the easement, but they will also construct the water main to their property, and all that will be borne to the developer. And they'll have to have some sort of easement of some sort. I don't know if we'll be able to do it in the right-of-way of the 17th extension. More than likely, it'll have to be a public utility easement. And then the city engineer will inspect the construction of that to make space. Due to the fact that we have sewer lift station capacity issues in this area, they will construct a private on-site lift station. And so they'll have their own private lift station on the facility grounds. I don't think that site's been proposed yet, Dan, but I don't believe it has. Ultimately, that lift station will be serving this facility and this facility only. They will have to construct it to make sure it meets specs on the new force main that they will also install. But ultimately, that lift station will never be the city's. It will be the property owner, whoever that may be, of the facility. Once that is built, then they will have to do a force main from the lift station to tie into our system. We're also working on where that ties into. They will incur those costs as well to extend that wastewater, that force main. And our service will basically treat the force main like a service line. And so ours will be starting at the private lift station going to our system. That's where we will have these. That's where we will inherit once it's constructed. A little different. Seems to be moving forward, though. Danny, any other thoughts on your end? I think I hit everything in a nutshell.
Dan, what do you think the sewer line will be tied in at?
Pardon me?
What do you think the force main will be tied in at?
In that alley just east of the cap.
Okay.
Right there, south of 13th.
I can't even reach it. This alley right here.
Okay.
The end of this sewer line dead ends somewhere in this area right in here, so that's probably.
Okay.
They're still acquiring the property right now, Commission. There is a caveat in the development agreement that if they don't acquire the property within a certain amount of time, the developer agreement does become null and void. They're in the process of purchasing it. So, and Bent Creek, Stan Ware, his outfit are the owners of that property, and so they're in the negotiations of closing on that. I don't know where that's at right now, but they're currently not the owners of the property. On the annexation, we went through all that with the current owner, which is Bent Creek, is Stan. So, but the technical development agreement will be with Midwest Housing once they acquire the property. I think that's all I got.
Any other questions?
They've been pushing pretty hard.
They have lots of different deadlines because of the state too, right,
Yeah,
Joe? I mean,
yeah, they got the tax credits, the HTC, housing tax credits. I'm not 100% familiar with that. I only know it in concept, but, you know, they go out and they build these certain types of model. I can't remember, is it senior living or low income? Do you remember? I can't remember. It's one of those.
Their initial request was senior living.
Senior living.
Yes.
So they go out and they get qualified for these housing tax credits, and they'll get 7 to 9%, I believe, in tax credits. And they claim that this is what they say. That's the only way that makes this project solvent in terms of cash. I can remember it was Creekside, PDHCA.
I don't believe so, up there, no. It was subsidized, though, for
It was subsidized.
that process.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the plan development agreement for Kingdom Lots subdivision.
Okay. Have a motion second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
All right, Mayor, Mr. Mayor. My name's Mike Fox, and I'm here representing the developer of the project
Okay.
that Joe
Yeah.
just talked about. And I want to take this opportunity to thank you and the commissioners for your consideration here today. My name's Mike Fox. I live in Plainview. I just retired from the EDC down there, and we did a project in Plainview with these people a number of years ago. They rehabilitated the old Hilton Hotel, which was an 8-story abandoned property, been vacant and abandoned for like 30 years. They turned it into affordable housing, 27 units. That facility is now full with a waiting list. This company did everything that they said that they would do, were great to work with, and it was a very positive experience for the city of Plainview, I know that. So just wanted to convey that message to you as well. And again, thank you for your consideration.
Your role with them is what now?
I'm just representing them. There was someone supposed to be here with the company, and they got sick, and Dan Seiler, the CEO of the company, called me and said, Mike, can you run up to Canyon and represent us? So I was happy to do that because they're a good company.
If you've not seen the one they redid at Plainview, it's on Main Street, right, Mike? I think.
It's
right
downtown.
there.
It's right in the middle of downtown. It was one of the
It's really
depending,
nice.
5 or 6 of the earliest Hilton hotels that were built, and it really got to be in bad shape. It was closed down in the mid-80s, and then just sat there vacant. And really, when they came in, it was most people in town were probably more in favor of bulldozing it and demolitioning it and turning it into a parking lot. There were a few people in the community that kind of held on, tried to keep the thing alive, and I'm glad they did, because this has been a very positive thing for our downtown area in particular. So they're a good company. They'll do what they say they're going to do.
Okay. Well, good. Well, thank you for coming up to vouch for me.
Sure.
Good job. All right. With that, takes us to item number 14. Executive session pursuant to 551.071, consultation with attorney, 551.072, deliberations about real property, 551.087, economic development and negotiations, 551.074, personnel matters, city manager evaluation, and 551.074, board appointments, fire department, pension board. With that, I have 553, and we will retire into exec session.
Get it all?
Oh, yeah.
Got the quarters anyway, don't you?
At least.
Great job, Frank. Yeah. No, thank you.
Thank you. Joe, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Good dog. Wait till somebody else comes.
That's a good question. How are you? Steve.
You know, I don't have time. I'm gonna go back that.
He's not gonna have it. You know what?
This thing you and I did, right? Get out of order after work.
You paid $30 for that?
Yeah, well,
Actually, you know, like, I've done that.
Down the office.
Good deal.
Yeah,
Appreciate
my
it.
time.
I'll check all that.
If we ever do that,
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm doing. Just double it in your time, that's what and then you'll still
You know it, right? Crazy.
They may not.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
Or maybe he adds money.
Go back to the damn receipt.
Divides by 2.
You would think there was only enough.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Let's see.
It's got an
We've got an hour yet. Yeah, let me, just come by Before you fix
Did I send you some stuff that I was supposed to send you, or did I forget about it? 'Cause I'm talking about that. I did.
That was always the wheel. Gotta get the air, gotta get that done. So, but yeah, anytime you come by, you can dive into it and kind of get lost, you know what I mean?
That's exactly what it says.